What's up, Starcraft fans? This video is brought to you by Endarthe, who is supporting me on Patreon. Pulse cancer support for hire are guaranteed, a video return per month. This month, he requested that I review the Wiki entry for Jim Raynor in co-op. So, I consider myself relatively okay for Raynor. Not that great, not that terrible. But I know someone who does. So he's in the call with me today, Dr. Lila. Lila, how are you today?
Oh, I'm doing well.
Doing well, that nice. I actually thought you'd be pretty sleepy by now. Isn't it like almost midnight where you are?
It's past
It's
midnight.
past midnight. That's amazing. Oh my goodness, the things we put ourselves through. Anyway, so I actually have the wiki open for me right now, and I'm looking at it. It's pretty difficult to look at because there are a lot of ads, there are a lot of sidebars, and lots of unnecessary stuff on here. So I took the liberty of transferring all this information onto a sort of slideshow that I hope will be easier for us to read. So if we can actually switch to that, there we go. Let's actually begin. So it says here, Jim Raynor is a playable commander in the co-op missions and one that is unlocked initially for free. That's correct. He's meant to represent a standard Terran commander, and it is loaded as infantry based with access to infantry supports and abilities. What do you think about standard Terran commander, Lila?
Definitely, I do think he plays the closest to ladder Terran, given that his kit is very simplified compared to the other intricate Terran commanders.
Yeah, I guess. I've been watching a bunch of 1v1 Terran games recently. I noticed them using a lot more cyclones, so I'm not sure how true this is, you know? Jimmy, of course, doesn't have access to cyclones. Also, if I recall correctly, the 1v1 Terrans get an expansion, like two of them, pretty quickly. They usually go for three command centers early, right? And they have more bases than two. Raynor is stuck with two bases, like most COP commanders. The the saving grace, I guess, is that in co-op the mineral patches themselves are denser. They are richer, so you can keep muling them even with like 4+ orbital commands. So I guess it's kind of close. I guess it's the closest to 1v1. Would you agree, Lela?
I'm mostly basing this off my memory of doing some ladder in Heart of Swarm, since, uh, co-op, it was essentially right after Heart of Swarm and
Yeah.
early stages of Legacy of the Void. So I guess the meta hadn't evolved to the point that it is today. But I do remember my personal Terran playstyle was a lot of barracks play.
Yeah, I
And I
also
would frequently go up like 3 bases and so on.
right? I also remember in Heart of the Swarm in particular, Terrans used a lot of Widow Mines. I don't think Raynor has that option. But yeah, fair. I always say it's the closest, so there we go. Here we are on the sidebar. I actually went over the sidebar and noticed his role is infantry support, air assault, drop pod insertion, and mine warfare. What do you think about this? I think infantry support. I wouldn't say support, but infantry is his bread and butter, right? Not really support. So like he's the boots on the ground, so to speak. He just cleans up with his bio. Air assault. What do you think about air assault?
I think that's the least used part of him from my perspective. I don't know how the common player handles Raynor. I mean, you have those battle cruiser users, but I do think his core design was meant for infantry with support from his factory and starport options.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. His core design seems to be infantry based. How about drop pod insertion in mine warfare? What do you think drop pod insertion means?
I guess it's just referring to the fact that all of his units can be deployed right at the front lines.
Ah, so drop pod reinforcement. That's probably what it
Yeah,
means. Mine warfare, I think, is pretty self-explanatory. You use spider mines to camp where the enemies are supposed to spawn, or even I've actually done a bit of this. I have spider mines in front of where my static defense are on certain maps like Oblivion Express, so that when they arrive my static defense and siege tanks would aggro them, and it would walk into the mines. At least that's how the theory works. Does it still work today?
In some cases, yes.
Yeah, especially if the enemy's ground based. On more sidebar action, we have strengths, anti-air countermeasures. What do you think? Does Rain have strong anti-air?
That depends on if you're talking regular missions or mutations. I think his anti-air does fall off quite significantly under mutations.
Limitations, especially with stuff like Avenger. I actually
Yeah.
think, I actually think his anti-air is not strong, but average. Not weak either, but average. Because we have commanders like Abathur with Devourers. You have obviously Super Gary from Stet Boy. You have a lot of like the anti-air from commanders like Alarak. Yeah, compared to that, Marines are serviceable. They're decent, but would you call them strong anti-air or more average?
No, Marines are meant to be all around, so they
Yeah.
can't be particularly strong in anything.
I guess I guess the article here meant Vikings. You think Vikings would be strong anti-air?
Yeah, they were definitely thinking about Vikings,
All right.
but I would say compared to everything else in co-op, they're decent but not great.
Yeah, like I said, it's average. Powerful calldowns. I think I agree with this. Powerful calldowns with Hyperion in particular, uh, being able to take out valuable or dangerous units like siege tanks and Vipers and High Templar, and Banshees being able to help with the damage output. What do you think? Powerful cooldowns relative to other cop commanders, though? Would you say that Raynor's cooldowns are powerful relative to other commanders?
Yeah, I would say so. I do think they're more versatile than, say, Stukov's.
Ah, well, Stukov does have the Alexander. Why would you say that Raynor's top bars are more versatile than Stukov's?
For Dustwings, they're not as powerful in terms of their survivability, but the fact that they're available more often, I do think gives them a lot more versatility in like in what's Raynor's flexibility, which I consider one of his defining features because he is somewhat of a well-rounded. He was designed to be somewhat a well-rounded commander,
Yeah,
but
I can
in
see that.
particular, the Hyperion, I think, is particularly strong, especially given its point defense drones
Oh yeah,
and
point defense drones,
the
definitely.
Yamato, which can snipe certain dangerous units, which is really great support for your Bioforce.
Yeah, that's true. Like we mentioned, they're very useful at sniping the splash damage and other dangerous units. Speaking of Stukov, though, I mean Stukov, yes, his Apocalypse doesn't come on quite as frequently, but can he not make up for that using the Infest structure top bar? I think it's pretty effective, especially when you have a lot of charges of it. What else?
I don't think Infrastructure does enough damage to justify it, but
Ah,
I wouldn't know for sure since I'm not a Stukov player.
that makes sense. All right, that's fair. That's fair. Enhanced mineral income due to mule usage. Mule usage? Yeah, I would definitely agree with this, right?
I mean, he does have the highest income, so
Highest income. Spider mines are powerful in offense and defense. Spider offense? How do you use spider mines offensively?
that's something I have been doing a little bit more often lately, where in the middle of a battle, I would have a small group of vultures laying mines in front of the Marines. And since the Marines are drawing more aggro, the spider mines will have enough time to arm and actually rush towards the enemy.
Wow, I need to
So
see some of that.
yeah,
That looks
I've
very
been doing it
interesting.
with some of the mutation runs that we have been doing.
I didn't
I
even notice that.
especially use it when there's environmental mutators where you can't just lay mines anywhere you want because the mutators will kill them.
Take them out.
So I
Yeah,
use them in battle.
I need to. I need to take notice of that. I don't actually notice you doing that. Maybe I should. Then again, I am usually busy with my own thing. Medics can heal mechanical units, giving utility for both allies. I think this is true, but in practice, does anyone send medics to their allies and not just F2 them backward to their army?
Well, I've always been upset at my medics for healing my ally instead of my own army. So
Especially when some allies have better healing than medics. Like, for example, Abathur's Mend, Step Boy's Green Zone. Like, why do you need medics? But,
yeah,
yeah.
but at least medics can give damage reduction as well. I think that's the
Ah.
important part that a lot of people miss out on. That damage reduction, it really helps.
That's actually true. Damage. That's like up to 30%, right? Or what was the damage reduction?
I thought it was 25.
25. Well, yeah. Okay, let's make it 25. Weaknesses. Weaker early game that relies on ally and cooldowns. I think this is definitely true, right?
Well, normally you're supposed to be able to hold your own with a proper build order,
Yeah,
but it's definitely a lot less forgiving than other commanders early game.
definitely true. I do know that whenever I play Raynor, I feel like I'm very weak early game because I don't have a proper build order. I never have a proper build order for a lot of commanders. Just kind of do whatever, and eventually I get to a point in the mid game where I have the things that I need to have. But you're right. As long as you have a proper build order, he's not that weak in the early game. Very reliant on cooldowns and proper timing. Do you agree with this?
I wouldn't exactly say reliant. I mean, they do benefit hugely from the call downs, but his design philosophy is that his bioforce gets support. So that's what the rules are for the call downs as well as his factory and starport units.
Mm,
So if they're reliant on their support, then the support becomes a crutch.
kind of, yeah. Yeah. Area of effect damage, so splash damage. We agree with this, right? He's weak to splash.
Yes, very.
Very weak to splash. Requires good micro, macro, and hotkey use to utilize well. Yeah. Yeah, we definitely agree with that. But which commander doesn't rely on good macro and hotkey use to utilize well?
I think
Statement?
generally any commander that relies more on army will require more micro and macro in general than hero
Ah.
commanders.
Yeah, I guess. I guess that's fair. Alright, let's move on. Overview. Raynor has access to a mix of classical Terran bio units and mech units. He can drop units directly at the rally points, combined with potentially limitless access to mules. Strong macro will be rewarded. He's generally a difficult commander to play and even harder to master. But at higher levels of play, he is able to spawn camp ground attack waves and sustain pushes indefinitely. This seems true, right? Difficult commander, but hard to master. But at high levels, he is able to spawn camp.
Yeah, I think that's decent for general cases.
Yeah. Okay. Moving on. Accessibility, ease of play. So this thing seems to have a scale from poor to excellent with color codes and stuff. So green is really good, red is really bad, orange and yellow, I guess somewhere in between. Like orange is worse than yellow. It looks like. So ease of play is fair. Would you say it's fair?
Yeah, I guess if you've been doing the campaign and a little bit of ladder, it'll feel reasonably intuitive,
Ah.
except for multiple orbitals.
Oh
That's
yes.
not super intuitive.
You know what? You know what else I noticed when I see new players trying to get into StarCraft, apparently putting stuff in control groups is not at all intuitive to them. I've seen a lot of newer guys; they don't have their command setters in the same control group, so they don't even build workers multiple at a time. They just build from the command setter, the one command setter that's closest to the mineral patches. So that seems to be a problem. But I guess it's not a Raynor problem. It's more of I guess, an introduction problem because nowhere in all my years of StarCraft playing have I seen any in-game guide that tells players to put their structures in a control group. Have you seen that? It's never taught, right? In game, you need
Yeah,
to.
not that I recall.
You basically need to watch an external guide on YouTube to tell you to put your stuff in control groups, and that opens up a lot of play for especially for newer players. Sub Ascension power, excellent. Would you say he's excellent sub Ascension? I'm trying to recall when I was still leveling up Raynor. Oh, sub Ascension
Wait, so
means
does that mean before your level 90 mastery or before your level 15?
both. I think both sub mastery and sub Ascension. Yeah, sub Ascension means level 89 and below. I think the masteries don't really punish him that much, do they? Unless you're very specific with hitting your timings with top bar usage, I guess.
Yeah, unfortunately, the time when I was uh, sub 90 mastery was a very long time ago, so I don't have a lot of good, like
Yeah,
decent memory of how it felt. But since I have done some prestiges, and I actually did most of my prestiges solo,
nice.
so
Of course you did.
so
Uh,
I think the fact that he gets orbitals from basically level one,
level
right,
one. Yeah,
makes it so that it's not too painful
yeah.
because that's his macro is the core of his power.
That's true. So would you still say it's excellent, or is it closer to good than excellent?
I wouldn't say excellent, but yeah, good.
Yeah, I would say also pretty good. Power level for beginners, poor. No doubt about it, right? For beginners, he's definitely a poor choice.
Right.
Yeah, which really makes us call into question in the tooltip for the co-op selection screen, recommended for all players. No, no, it's not recommended for all players. It's recommended for experts. Power level for veterans, excellent. Would you agree?
No, not at the current stage the game is at.
Maybe once upon a time, before prestigious, before guys like Tychus and later came in, maybe. But these days, would you say it's closer to good or fair or poor?
I think I would put it at fair.
Fair, yeah. In certain situations, especially when you're up against ground enemies and in maps that you can just cheese, he's very useful. But certain mutators like the environmental mutators, Avenger specifically, I think even We Move Unseen taxes him a lot because you have to scan a lot, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So for veterans, he's fair. I would agree with that. Early game strength, good. Wait, did we just see in the sidebar? I'm not crazy, did I? It says in his weaknesses, very weaker early game. Look, it says here weaknesses, weaker early game. But here it says in early game strength it says good. What? It's not even self consistent. What does this guy mean?
Yeah, his early game strength definitely is not good.
So fair, so closer to fair.
Yeah, fair and unforgiving.
Fair and unforgiving. There we go. So that makes it unfair, right? Um, Ease of macro, fair. What would you think about this? Ease of macro.
I would I would say it's reasonably fair and caution against making it unfair by building too many orbitals. Then the macro demands just go up way high.
I would actually say ease of macro for him is actually good because he can just hold down the make units button and his depots are instant. Maybe I'm wrong here, but I would actually think it's good. I'm thinking of maybe I'm just bad at warping in, but I often find that I often find that missing warp-ins for Protoss commanders is a bit more punishing than missing drop pod rounds or even mule rounds for Raynor. I'm not sure about the fair. I would put it. I would edge it maybe halfway towards fair and good. Maybe leaning a bit towards good. Maybe I'm wrong here. Enlighten me here, please.
Well, the example I like to go to is when you're doing going nuclear mutations.
Yeah,
A lot of people will lose their armies between macro cycles, like dropping mules or building supply depots, and then they look back and their army is
army's
gone.
gone. I've definitely experienced that. Okay, I wouldn't say that's ease of macro. I would say that's a punishing mutator, right?
Well, it
I get it.
means it means macro takes away a lot of attention.
Okay, fair. If you put it in that way, then yes, it's definitely fair in that regard. Ease of micro, excellent. I don't know. I've never been able to split my marines
Uh,
effectively. I wouldn't say it's excellent. Maybe good, but the only macro I've ever done with Raynor is making the Hyperion move back and forth. That's it. Maybe a bit of stutter step, and maybe a bit of running my marines behind to let the fire bats take the front. Other than that, would you say it's excellent?
no, the army is just usually gets too large, too many variables, and utilizing that effectively does take some time to develop.
So is it closer to fair or good or
I'd also
poor?
put it at fair.
Yeah, fair, right? Mutation versus
But usually you can't separate ESA macro and ESA micro because those two are what you're spending your APM on. If you think of your APM as a resource and you have to split them between macro and micro, the fact that Raynor is demanding for both means that balancing the two of them is another skill that you need to have.
That's actually true. Yeah, especially if you're newer. You need to balance between producing stuff, which is macro, and controlling the stuff that you have, which is micro. All right.
I think that's part of the reason why I was trying to say his ESA macro was fair because I was also thinking, like if you're macroing, you're not microing, and you're constantly tugging back and forth between them. So that makes the macro part a bit harder, especially during
Yeah,
battles.
I see what you mean. All right. Let's move on. Mutation versatility fair. Whenever we do the tier list with Tutu and Stickspender, he's usually low, but on some weeks he gets really high. So I think fair is fair for Raynor, for mutation versatility, right?
I would almost say poor.
Poor.
Like every time I do mutations or do mutation solos with Raynor, I have to work my ass off.
Yikes. Hmm. So would you say poor or fair is fair?
I'm hesitant to say completely poor, maybe a little between poor and fair.
All right, I can get with that. Maybe halfway between poor and fair, but a bit more lenient, I guess. Ramp up speed, good. I don't know. What do you think?
If he can get his macro machine going, then yeah, he can ramp up pretty fast. But before that, it's kind of just you you're going at just a steady pace.
All right,
So I
so
guess good is
good is
a
fine.
decent. Yeah, good is fine.
All right. Strategies. Raynor at his core is very infantry oriented. Is a very infantry oriented commander. The firepower of Bioball lets him deal with all kinds of targets. His ability to deploy his created units straight to their rally points allows him to quickly reinforce. When he requires extra firepower, he can use two offensive calldowns as well as various mechanical units to support. In some cases, even supplant his infantry. What do you think about this?
Yeah, I think it's an accurate description.
Very accurate. All right, gets a thumbs up from us. Power Set 1, Research Resource Cost. While speed increases for drop pod units is helpful for Raynor's bio army, it does not work quite as well for his mech forces. The ability for drop pods to land on the front line also limits his use of the speed boost, which can already be granted through Stim. Power Set 1 makes all of Raynor's upgrades and techs much more affordable and increases survivability of Raynor's army. I think this guy is basically recommending that we always use research resource cost over speed increases. Do you agree?
Uh, I think he's saying you could use it for bio Raynor, but for everything else, you should. Or drop pod boost is good for the bio army, but for everything else, you should probably go for research cost reduction.
Actually, I think I agree with that. Whenever I go for bio, I like having the speed increases because usually the fights are over quickly, and you want them to run towards the next fight right away. So yeah, I think I can get on with that.
So in the cases where you're expecting to refresh your army very often, drop pod boost is good. But there is a caveat where in cases where your early game build order is very tight in terms of resources, then you might still want to go with research cost reduction. So I do find myself taking that very often in mutations.
All right, fair. Banshee Airstrike cooldown, Duskwings, Hyperion. These are both good masteries. The Hyperion as a cooldown is a more powerful option for its abilities and flexibility. Duskwing's significant cooldown reduction is, by a large margin, the more time-effective choice. Due to their damage output advantage, the Duskwings can also be useful against mutators, such as Voidrits or Untimed maps. The Hyperion, however, can attack air and ground targets, has increased mobility, provides fairly high threat priority for the AI to face. Therefore, the choice of mastery here should be changed according to player preference and mission parameters. I think this is fair, right? It's not always Hyperion or always Dustwings, but I always, no, not always. I usually find myself leaning towards Hyperion more and more, just because it can help really clear the way for my bio. What do you think?
Something I like about Raynor is he's very nuanced. So when I wrote a similar section on the Team Liquid guide, I didn't just give a general statement on like when which one is better generally. I wrote an entire wall of text on how to decide which mastery to focus on.
Ah,
So when I'm speedrunning, I generally tend towards Dustwings because it allows me to attack multiple locations at once without having to run my bio all the way across the map.
all right.
And also the fact that speed runs are too short, so that even with
Yeah,
maxed Hyperion Mastery, you don't really get much more use out of it.
that's true. Definitely agree. All right, that's fair. So,
In mutations, however,
yes.
Duskwings become a lot weaker because Amon is just stronger, and Hyperion just makes a really good base buster later on. When it's flying over bio, you can bust through bases with
Much
that
more
plus
ease.
two attack,
Yeah,
that
yeah.
plus two aura.
I definitely agree.
But
There's
even then, with full Hyperion Master, you're only really getting one more use in a regular game, maybe two if it's longer.
maybe two.
And you have to decide, is that really worth giving up a lot more uses of Dustwings?
And the unfortunate thing is that for regular brutal, especially if you play random mission, you don't really know what map you're gonna be on until you load into it, and it's too late to change your masteries. Oh well. I guess though that yeah you have to kind of look and see which is more advantageous between the Duskweeds and Hyperion for any given situation, especially for mutations or weekly mutations where you can see what you're up against before you actually queue up. So yeah, okay, this is fair. Power set 3, medics heal additional target. Additional heal is considered the better one, since it reduces the number of medics needed to attend to both you and your allies' units. The second mastery is very powerful for mech army. I think it's mech attack speed for the other mastery. So what do you think about this?
Yeah, this one is just a clean split between are you going bio or are you going mech?
Yeah, fair. All right.
Although, even if you're going mech, it might be useful to put just 1 point into medic heal if you're going to be using medics to heal your mech, because that extra heal beam will still give you the damage reduction.
Oh, that's really sick. I haven't thought of that. Yeah, yeah. You know what? That's actually that's actually very useful. All right, good to know. Prestige strategy. So this is a very thick wall of text that I actually. You see the wall of text, right?
Yes.
Nobody likes reading that. Come on. I took the liberty of splitting them into cleaner paragraphs. Do you think the second one is easier to read or the first one?
For me, the second one, just because it's brighter.
All right. For me, the second one's easier to read because I have ADHD, and the first one, just looking at the size of the thing, I think any block of text more than 6 lines long, already instantly turns me off of reading it. So whenever guys on YouTube, for example, leave huge comments and they're all in a single paragraph, I usually just pretend to have read it. I do try to read like the first 2 lines, but when I get the general idea, I just kind of turn off of it. But yeah, I think splitting the paragraphs or splitting the blocks into paragraphs makes it easier to read. Backwater Marshal makes Raynor's infantry much more durable with double health, allowing them to be viable well into the late game, since they remain powerful damage units that move fast and are quick and cheap to mass. This means Raynor can go pure barracks and be much more effective with it than ever. Yeah, seems fair, right? It's
Yeah.
just an objective fact. However, his economy greatly suffers for the loss of mules. Also a fact. Raynor will not have the resource cache he normally does to replace his infantry if he suffers heavy losses. His infantry is still very vulnerable to splash damage, such as Banelings, Disruptors, or Static Storm. I guess he meant Psionic Storm. I think the only one here that really retains its effectiveness is Disruptors. I would add Reavers on top of this, and probably Vipers, because those don't care about the double health. They will still one-shot Marines, particularly the Reavers and the Disruptors. And the Vipers, they don't care how much health you have. If you're in the cloud, you can't move. What do you think?
Yeah, I think that's a good assessment.
Right? I think for Storm, do you change the way you micro against Storm with Backwater Marshal versus the other prestigious?
No, not in, not in particular.
Right? You still back off against Storm, but I've actually considered if you're fighting against Amon Storm, his Storm deals 80 damage, and your Marines if they get really high on upgrades, they can go above 80 health. So I think there's an argument to be made to just stand under the storm and just keep shooting because if you move away, not only do you reduce your damage output, you also just walk into another storm because anyone really know how to target those storms. So I think what I would just if I'm using the backwater marshal, I guess I can still have the marauders up front. They don't really care about storm, and even less so with the first prestige. But you're saying that we wouldn't really change it, or do you already do that?
No, I treat my micro as though I'm playing P0, just avoid unnecessary damage. Especially
Ah,
since for P1, medic energy is at a premium.
all right, that's fair. That's actually very fair. Okay, that makes sense. So you just treat your bio carefully regardless, even if they have double health because the medic energy is more important. This prestige further incentivizes Raynor to focus on the barracks army due to his lower economy, which makes it more difficult for him to transition into factory and starport based units. A player must leverage Raynor's improved infantry durability with proper management of their numbers and good micro to gun down enemies without suffering too many losses. I think this is, yeah, just objective fact. A benefit of this prestige is that without mules, Raynor will always have plenty of energy for scanner sweep or in his orbitals to scout incoming attacks, get high ground vision. Wait, on how many maps exactly do you need high ground vision? Off the top of my head, Cradle of Death, Void Thrashing, maybe Void Launch a little bit on the middle of the map, but what other maps do you need high ground vision on?
I don't think you really need high ground vision on any of the
Right?
maps, especially since as soon as a single Marine steps a little up the ramp, then you get
Get the
that
high
full
ground
high ground
vision,
vision.
right?
And those Marines will last longer than P0 Marines anyways.
Yeah,
So
that's
they'll
true.
stay up there longer.
Definitely. I think the rest of it though is pretty accurate. I guess maybe aside from the number of orbitals. How many orbitals do you build on backwater? 3 should be good, right? 3?
Uh, I mean, in most cases, I just go with the one that you start off with and the one at the expo.
So just two. All right, fair. Okay, Rough Rider. Yeah, big paragraph. I just split it into two. Rough Rider effectively turns Afterburner ability into stim packs for all of Raynor's mech forces. This is a considerable increase in overall army firepower across the board and is viable for any map, since Raynor can still use whatever composition of his own the player wishes, and they will all benefit from Afterburners. Do you agree?
So I've done some basic analysis of P2, and I've always been of the opinion that I don't see much difference between P2 and P0 as far as the mech effectiveness goes.
Interesting. Not even with Stim.
Right.
Okay. Why is that?
Well, the reasoning is the role of, I guess, mech is typically for artillery purposes. So if I use siege tanks, which is the go-to test subject for this Rough Rider afterburner.
Yeah.
Uh, so for them, I consider their first strike to be the most important.
Why is that?
Uh, it's how do I explain this?
Take your time.
Uh, the thing I like to compare to is when I used to play this 4X game called Stellaris. Have you heard of it?
I have now.
Yeah. Well, the shipbuilding meta for that game was the first strike. It's
Okay.
always the alpha strike, not the first two strikes or the first few moments of battle, the literal first strike, because if you can take out as much of the enemy as you can in the first strike, then when the enemy gets to fire back at you, it's going to be severely reduced.
Ah, all right. I see. I can see that. Yeah, I see it. So
So
the
the
first,
meta was just, yeah, getting an overwhelming number of first strike
so burst
and
damage is more important than sustained damage for this case.
not even just burst damage, it's the literal first damage.
All right.
Because Afterburner actually P2 actually has better burst damage
Interesting.
over the 8 seconds.
Yeah. Hmm.
So like this talk of critical mass of siege tanks and stuff, I think they benefit more from raw numbers instead of
Instead of stim.
firing faster.
Interesting. All right. So an extra siege tank is more important than the same number of siege tanks, but with stim.
However, I'm not saying P0 is better. It's just that
There's
between their individual advantages, I don't see too much of a difference. And I've never
interesting.
felt, whenever I was soloing mutations and stuff, sometimes I would try out P2 if I'm deciding for a mech build. And
That's
yeah, I
interesting.
don't feel much of a difference. There's nothing P2 can do that P0 cannot.
Interesting. I've actually never thought of it that way before. That's very interesting. The player will need to field more medics than usual to support Raynor's army, as just like stim packs, Afterburners now damages the that uses it. However, Raynor no longer has a discount on his unit production, so it will take longer to mass his army, and he'll be more reliant on gas. Afterburners must be researched at the army first, so in each game Raynor will immediately benefit from the prestige, and will have to invest in a fair bit of time and resources to teching up and researching afterburners. My goodness, I should have split this into two paragraphs. But anyway, yeah, I can see this. I can see this as being the reason why there's not a noticeable difference because the army itself is more expensive. You do get the stim, but the army itself is more expensive, so you get fewer of them for the same number of resources. Okay, I guess I can see it.
Oh yeah, it does put a disruption into your build order.
Yeah,
And you start getting your tanks out much later, so the timings are different as well.
look at this wall. My goodness, I'm seeing individual words but not sentences. I'm just not gonna be able to read this. Look at this. So I just split it off. Rebel Raider allows Raynor to ignore barracks and factory and focus solely in starport. He can get an orbital up early by sacrificing his first depot to upgrade. The investment will pay for itself very shortly because of the mule. With a further discount on gas cost, Raynor can mass them more easily. However, Raynor still needs significant gas to be able to build multiple starports and build from them, so you cannot jump into starport focused armies immediately. Do you agree with this?
I think Rebel Raider is more mineral limited, at least earlier on,
Yeah.
just because of that increased mineral costs for everything and the reduced Vespine gas costs for his air army. So they drastically shifted the mineral Vespine gas balance to the point if with perfect macro you generally need 50% more income than 2 base.
Interesting. So I think the thing I wanted to focus on here is basically this is saying that for the Rebel Raider we don't use anything from the barracks or factory anymore, and we go straight to starport. But it says that we cannot jump to starport focus immediately, so we still kind of have to do a transition build to get something for the barracks and something for the factory to hold off until we are ready to make starport units. So it's kind of like contradicting itself, saying we can ignore barracks and factory, but we can't ignore barracks and factory. What do you think of that?
Wait, hold on. Does Starport cost gas with P3?
No,
I
150 minerals,
It
mineral
shouldn't, right?
gas.
Then
Yes.
maybe this is outdated. Maybe this was an earlier patch when it did cost gas and you needed to build
Yeah.
like barracks and factory to get the armies as well.
I think I think what I normally do for third prestige is I just go straight to air. I actually just use the top bars to hold myself. Maybe some bunkers, but just top bars until I'm ready to actually fight with more air units. I don't really get anything with the factory and the barracks from this prestige. Do you?
Yeah, you don't exactly need to transition for
Yeah,
P3.
just go straight to air. This prestige as a whole focuses Raynor as a late game commander. As well, he can still use barracks and factory based armies. The increased costs makes it doing so more difficult, and they grant this prestige no benefit. While it will take time for Raider to build up, a team of upgraded Vikings is more powerful against most enemies, with the addition of their splash, as much as in melee play. Once Raynor hits a critical mass of battlecruisers, they are nearly unstoppable. I don't know. I don't know about this. I guess it's correct, but I don't think it's really saying anything. There's just a lot of, I don't know. I try to make sense of this sentence. Like, what is it really trying to say?
Just telling you to make air units.
Yeah. Uh, I guess that's what it was trying to say. I don't think it needed to use 6 whole lines of text to say that. My goodness.
Yeah, but I could add that with the factory, you can at least make vultures if you want to
Add spider
spawn
mines.
camp.
That's true.
Yeah, because you only need like 6 or 8, and you should be fine.
6 or 8 orbitals, or
No,
vultures.
6 or 8 vultures.
Vultures. I see on Temple of the Past, where you have 6 vultures on each side, so that adds up to like 24. No, 18 vultures. That's a lot of vultures on Temple of the Past.
That's because the lanes are so long.
Yeah, that's what she said. This prestige
Uh,
benefits let Raynor get much more usage out of his cooldowns. This is definitely true. Yeah, this prestige allows Raynor to use more his cooldowns more frequently, and with a large enough air force, their cooldowns will almost be entirely eliminated. And Raynor can keep the Hyperion Duskwings in play almost indefinitely. So basically, this is saying that if you get to a high enough supply, you'll have permanent uptime on your top bars. They bring them with the associated benefits of being able to call down such use more often, and are both all around more powerful air forces for attack and defense. I think this paragraph could be said this whole block of text can be said with like half the length. I feel like there's so much text in here. That's basically just saying, yeah, with this prestige, you can make a lot of air units, which will decrease the cooldown on your top bars and make them basically available all the time. That was like 4 lines. My goodness. My goodness, Wiki. Anyway, an
Yeah,
example,
more Hyperion is good.
right? More Harpoon, more good, right? That was like 4 words. What do you need? How many lines of this? My goodness. An example build order for beginners might be 15 orbital command, then command center and expansion. For fast expansion maps, then depot. 19, I guess at 19 supply, build the second command center at expo. Double refinery. Wait, 19? 19? 19 supply is your expansion? I usually build at like 16, but I guess 19 works. Double refinery, then starport, battlecruiser tech, and 2 armories as you can. Wait. This guy literally just said you have to get barracks and factories. Now it's going. Now it's telling us to go. Now it's telling us to go straight to battlecruiser tech. What are you really trying to say, Wiki? What?
It might be getting some. Part of it might not have been updated for patches. That's what I'm
Yeah.
feeling.
It feels. It definitely feels like it. It's not even internally consistent. My goodness. Upgrades
And
in
I think double
armory.
refinery. I think double refinery after the second command center is too early.
Too early. So when do you go for it?
Yeah, I think perhaps four
After
four command
4,
centers and then refinery.
then double refinery or quadruple refinery.
I'll have to test a bit more. I did recently try a P3 solo of Oblivion Express against Sky Terran just to see how that feels.
And
And going refinery too early just makes you bank a lot of gas. And then if you want to spend all of that gas, then you need to build an extra starport, which after you have used up all of your bank, it's gonna stay idle. So
interesting. Yeah, I guess I can see that. How do you deal with early attackers? Do you just hold until the top bars are ready? Do you not make a bunker? Because I remember I did a solo on one of the mutations, and Tutu specifically said that I should have had an extra bunker to mitigate the damage on my command centers and my allies' nexus. Do you get
I
a
mean that
bunker?
depends on the map.
Ah,
Oblivion Express, you don't need a bunker at all.
you just wait until the dusk. That makes sense. That dusk should be available at that point. All right. Anyway, upgrades in armory and upgrade command centers to orbital commands. What? Upgrades in armory and upgrade command centers to orbitals as soon as possible. Okay, that's standard, or that's basic. Maybe work your way up to 4 to 8 orbital commands with mules for scans and tactical jump. If you have enough orbital commands, you can feed mineral SCVs to the enemy. 2 or 3 starports is likely enough as a beginner. Drop mules and minerals a lot in the beginning. Drop them near. Uh, I guess that's where it ends. What do you think about that?
Well, they didn't put a lot of emphasis on grammar in that last paragraph.
No, they did not. I guess
I think
that's
4 to 8 orbital commands are fair.
yeah.
I don't think tactical jump needs scans though.
Yeah, you don't need scans for tactical jump. 2 to 3
And
starports.
if you have enough orbital commands, just sacrificing SCVs. That one, you do have to be careful because enough orbital commands, what that means is like 16 if you want to match 8 orbital
16.
income with full SCV saturation. Because uh, from the math, 8 orbitals will match full SCV saturation for your expo and your main.
But
So if you're
that's
going to sacrifice all of your SCVs to match your old income, you need uh, 8 more orbitals, so
does that
16.
factor in how mules bring in 30 minerals relative or compared to the SCV's 5 minerals.
Yeah, so this is calculating off of mule income.
Interesting. All right, so you need 16 orbitals. There we go. So you shouldn't sacrifice your entire mineral line. But if you already have a bank, does it make more sense to sacrifice workers? Like if you're maxed out and you already have a bank, do you not sacrifice SCVs at that point?
Yeah, you can if you want.
All right, fair. I would agree with that. My goodness, look at this. Call an air support. Raynor has the ability to call down Hyperion to the battlefield with various combat abilities, including Yamato, which can eliminate groups of enemies with high health, point defense drones that protect your army, an aura that increases the damage of units, and the ability to teleport to any location without vision, destroying enemy lines. Summoning and warping Hyperion does not require vision or location, allowing the player to reach distant points before overcoming enemy forces. Yeah, that's basically describing how it works. Its long-range laser batteries enable the player to eliminate dangerous threats to Raider's infantry before they get within striking distance, such as siege tanks. Yeah, we talked about this earlier. Point defense drones should be used to cover as much area as possible to defend both Hyperion and the surrounding units. Curiously, point defense drones will also remove nearby mag mines, giving an advantage in Mutator Magnificent to push more safely. The support ability of Hyperion also allows it to buff nearby units and works well with mass infantry. Yeah, we already talked about this. The Hyperion's attack is different from other units and cannot be stopped. Since it attacks any enemy units even while moving or being affected by a mutator effect. Not anymore. Thank you, Tongue Warcraft. It no longer attacks with fatal attraction. It no longer attacks with fear. It has been fixed. Thank you, Tongue Warcraft, for taking away the one good thing that the Hyperion really has. Which can be an advantage or disadvantage. For example, it will continue to attack even with a fear. No, it will not. Fatal attraction. No, it will not. And the polarity mutator effect. No, it will not. That one I think is a good thing. It no longer attacks polarized units. So yeah, someone needs to edit this. Maybe me. I could take it out. This section. Raynor's secondary cooldown is Duskwings, a group of cloaked banshees that attack nearby ground units. This is a faster cooldown and can be used for precision strikes at key targets, as well as extra damage to a push. We agree with this, right? The Duskwings?
Yeah.
Upon initial summon, they will strafe the area under them, useful for dealing damage to concentrated light units. Yes. Additionally, their cloak can be manually deactivated before Duskwings despawn to draw the enemy's attention. Huh, I've never thought of doing that. Have you ever done that?
No, because I don't want Duskwings to draw the enemy's attention.
I mean, just before they despawn, after their minute, they just fly up into the sky, right? So what this guy is saying is that when they're starting to fly to the sky, you decloak them to make them absorb a little bit of extra damage before they completely despawn. I've never done that before.
Do they actually become vulnerable?
No, but they do draw
they
they do draw aggro away from your other forces. Plus, they're in their last shots anyway. I think this is what the guy's saying. You might as well use them for a bit of tanking when they're about to despawn to draw aggro away from your army. This seems very useful. Yeah. Hold on. There we go. As the Duskwings despawn, they will have a moment of invulnerability as they fly off of the map. Oh yeah. When they're almost out of the map. But they will still be able to attack while the animation plays out. In some maps, it's possible to summon the Duskwings around the first enemy wave, allowing the Banshees to defend and clear the player's expansion using the resources they save to develop their economy faster. Remember that these cooldowns benefit from attack upgrades. Yes. Arm upgrades and range upgrades from the armory. Good to know. Those are just facts. Those are just objective facts. Toughest frag magnets. Another block of text. I've split it off. Look at this. It's much easier to read, I think. Raynor focuses primarily on infantry units, with support deriving from factory and starport units. Marines, Marauders, and Medics are a classic pairing. True. Although Marines possess good damage output, are produced quickly, and can attack both ground and air, they are vulnerable to anti-light compositions and splash damage, I guess. Meanwhile, Marauders are strongest armored units and have twice the health, but are vulnerable to air attacks and anti-armor units. Yeah, this is a fact. This is a factual statement. No mention of firebutts though.
Yep.
Using Marines and Marauders together allows them to cover each other's weaknesses and maintain their strengths. Firebats can be very useful for destroying large groups of light units and enemy waves, such as Zerglings and Zealots, as well as serving as a front meat shield for the Bio Ball. Their range makes them tend to lead attacks, but not away from the Bio Ball. But the core damage of the infantry army should come from the Marines. Yeah, this is a factual statement. Once upgraded, medics can heal and reduce the damage received by all allied units. Yeah, this is factual. Siege tanks provide siege support and defensive missions. Have you ever used siege tanks offensively? Like doing those siege tank pushes like you see in 1v1?
Not exactly.
Not exactly.
But that might be due to my preferred playstyle where I'm really aggressive, so I don't like unsieging small groups, moving them forward, sieging those, that leapfrog pushing. That's too slow for me.
Even with the fast siege upgrade, it's still not useful. There's an upgrade.
It's still too slow for my taste, but I wouldn't be opposed to people who try doing that sort of push.
Yeah, the splash is pretty good. Where were we? All right. Always have a card. Look at this giant wall of text. My goodness. No, there's no way I'm reading that. Among Raynor's area units are the Vikings, the Banshees, and the Battlecruisers. Vikings are relatively cheap units that, when properly massed, can be some of the most powerful air units in the game, capable of dealing large damage with a large enough range to attack from behind while other units tank the front lines. Vikings are fast and can travel long distance with ease. My goodness. Vikings have a ground mode that allows them to deal ground damage, but their relatively bulky size reduces their efficiency considerably compared to Raynor's other It's already split off, but it's such a slog to read. They're fast, they can shoot ground. Their large size makes them inefficient? What? Their relatively bulky size reduces their efficiency considerably. Really? Oh, you mean this guy means the ground Vikings. So when they're in ground mode, they're so large that they're not efficient per square meter, I guess. Their
DPS density is low.
Yeah, all right. That's I get it. So this guy's basically just scrubbing Banshees. Yeah, I guess it's fair, especially when you get the Rip Wave missiles. What is the splash range of the Rip Wave missiles?
I wouldn't know off the top of my head.
Would you say it's useful enough to make the Vikings really a solid anti-air option? I guess big waves of enemies.
We did discuss the Vikings briefly at the start. We agreed that they're pretty decent. It's just that they start falling off when you get mutations, especially compared to other anti-air options that other commanders have.
Yeah. Raynor's Banshees are effective when having to counter enemy waves with a low number of anti-air units, and their cloak allows them to deal heavy damage to priority targets without fear of reprisal. Banshees are very fragile for their cost, and as such suffer the same vulnerability to splash damage that causes Raynor's Bioball so much trouble. Yeah, I think this is factual. Finally, Raynor's Battlecruisers are expensive and slow to produce. Their damage output per supply lower damage output per supply than many of his bio units. An interesting note is that their tactical jump is improved compared to their multiplayer counterparts. Rather than appear at their target location after a short delay, they appear immediately. True. This can be useful when a location needs immediate reinforcing. Really? but cooldowns aren't available to handle it. Battlecruisers work best in combination with Duskwings. Do you agree with this? I usually just
Uh,
yeah.
yeah, I like battle cruisers more with just a Hyperion because of that +2 aura.
Right? And usually I just use a tactical jump to retreat and repair. I don't really use it offensively to jump into an enemy stronghold, you know? Or do you? Do you do that?
No, I think jumping straight into a reinforced area is a good way to just lose your battle cruisers.
Yeah, I think I would change this part to say the tactical jump allows them to retreat and get repaired and just fly back to the front when they're done repairing. I think that's how I would word this instead. All
But
right.
if there is an attack wave that's coming towards you and you missed it, then you could warp your battle cruisers back into position and handle the attack wave, something like that.
Something like that. All right. This is my rifle. Raynor can build combat units twice as fast than average, and his orbital drop, or 50% faster than average, and his orbital drop allows him to reinforce anywhere instantly. A good strat is to just create a massive army of infantry with support units aiding the push. Aside from the occasional splash damage threat, there is not much the bio army can handle, or cannot handle. I think we already talked about this. You prefer not to add siege tanks, but you can add other units, mechanical units. However, Raynor's Raynor's army can be grounded down. Such, it should be constantly reinforced, and rally points should be set on top of the army. Do you agree with this?
Yeah.
Oh, so you reinforce on top of the army. I was thinking that maybe it's better to have the reinforcement arrive just slightly behind the army in case you need to retreat, but I guess it's also fair to just have them right in the middle. Often, a constant influx of marines will do, as they're the quickest to produce, and those extra seconds can make all the difference in critical fights, but always make sure to have enough medics to back them up. Some missions will need getting higher tier units, especially if the enemy fields splash damage, lurkers, reavers, disruptors, banelings, ultralisk siege tanks, which can annihilate infantry armies. Enemy High Templar and Infestors can also cause serious infantry. Also Vipers. Also Vipers. A lot of grief. Should be focused down by support units or Raynor's cooldowns. This is true, right? We agree with this?
Yep.
Because Raynor's core bio army is ranged and can gain additional movement by stim, it's easy for Raynor to kite enemy forces from out of defensive positions, allowing Raynor to engage them without his army. Oh, so you kinda peel off the defenses. Do you do this? Or do you just charge in, YOLO in your army?
In speedruns, I sometimes do try to peel off the enemy, especially in the beginning.
Interesting.
In mutations, I don't know if I generally do it or not. Actually, maybe I do is whenever I go into the base, at least once. Like I just go up the ramp, shoot something, and then quickly retreat back and kill whatever follows me. But only at
Interesting.
the beginning, just to soften up the front.
So just do it once and then YOLO in. Alright, fair. Let's move on. Classic piece of engineering. One of the most powerful unit in Raynor's group is his vultures. Upgraded spider mines are powerful, recharge quickly, and can instantly wipe out most ground-based attack waves. Stack them in choke points, and the enemy will be unable to clear them before the mines. Not if they have splash, right? The enemies can splash down the spider mines, right?
Yeah, and that splash is the main reason why it's difficult to just lay them in like the attack paths
Yeah. I think
instead of just spawn camping.
the best spot for the spider mines is literally where the enemies spawn, so they don't have time to outrange the spider mines. In defensive missions, this tactic can be expensive, so it's advisable to have enough extra orbitals. Yeah, we already agree with this. Vikings or other anti-air should also be deployed so that the enemies cannot bring their air units in. All right, fair. Show me the money. That's a lot of text. My goodness. Having multiple orbitals will not only give Raynor a strong influx of minerals, but also the ability to scan areas whenever cloaked units attack. For cloaked units, give sight to enemy bases. Why does Raynor need sight to enemy bases? I don't know about this. I guess for his ally? Or high ground zones before a push. This gives sight to this gives sight, and the high ground zone area probably doesn't need to be here. Allow the allied player to here we go. For the ally, yeah, definitely for the ally. This gives them an advantage with beat affecting vision such as short-sighted, darkness, or fear of the dark. However, due to the fact that this is Raynor's only means of detection, he can have problems with beat hitters, like We Movency and Minesweeper. True, this is true. Yes. Yeah, this is true. Because of his mules, Raynor has the ability to churn out marines and lower gas costs units with ease, so a large number of orbital commands should be met with an equally large number of barracks. I think you mentioned this to me before. You basically want a barracks for every command center that you make, or is that outdated?
Well, I think with proper macro, that's a decent number. But what I like to tell most people is, if you find yourself floating more money, then make more barracks.
That's actually a good suggestion. Yeah, if you're following money, make more barracks. Pretty good suggestion. Command centers and orbitals have the ability to lift off and move, allowing them to be built before clearing expansion. All right, I think that's pretty good suggestion. Land.
That's a Terran thing.
Yeah, that's a Terran thing. Land on expansion after the area is cleared, since much of Raynor's bio units require more minerals and gas. Building refiners can be delayed. Yes. Alternatively, Raynor can take the only essential geysers needed for units like medics and give the geysers at his expansions for more gas-heavy allies like Nova and Vorazun. I think you also mentioned to me before that you still take the expansion gases. Do you recommend giving the gases to your gas-heavy allies, or just use them for yourself?
Well, Raynor's bio is surprisingly gas heavy early on because you're trying to build up your medic count.
Also upgrades.
So, yeah, medic count and upgrades. And that's why I don't even start adding in other supports like Marauders in a lot of the speedruns.
Interesting.
Until much later on. That's when I start banking gas, once I've finished getting all of my medics.
So once you start banking gas, once you get all your medics, you can give away your gases to your ally.
Yeah.
All right, cool. At what time does that usually happen for you?
I would say around 160-ish supply.
160-ish supply. How quickly can you get there? Can you get there in like the first 10 minutes? Or like 12 minutes?
No, that's hard to gauge because
Yeah.
that just depends on the mission and how aggressively I've been pushing.
All right, fair. So sometimes you can't even give away your gases. Fair. All right. Upgrading what we have is all well and good. Raynor is a strong commander once used effectively. Debatable. However, the Bailing Scourge and Shadow Disruption? Really? This guy is telling us.
Is that the Dark Templar composition?
That is the Dark Templar composition. Why?
They do come with disruptors for the later waves.
I think this guy probably meant the Disruptive Artillery, the Reaver Disruptor composition. It can't mean Dark Templar, right?
Right, the Dark Templar don't matter.
Yeah, I think he means Disruptive Artillery. That's the one with Reavers and Disruptors.
Yeah, I guess so.
Raynor can obliterate his army in seconds. Raynor can effectively have the majority of his forces deleted. This guy just said the same thing in 2 sentences. My goodness. Due to the lack of heavy Thor unit, Raynor's left relying on Marauders and Firebats to soak up the majority of the enemy fire, and they have a lower threat priority compared to the Thor. In order to alleviate this weakness, Raynor always pushes Firebats and Marauders to the front. Raynor's Bioball tends to mix it up during engagements, so Raynor will need to micro his army before and after every major fight. Alright. Raynor should always be researching upgrades for his units. Alright. Yeah, this seems fair. This is basically Raynor's counterplay to splash damage comps, aside from, just relying on your ally. Right?
Or just spawn camping.
Spawn camping, that works too. A little Terran ingenuity. Raynor is widely considered to be one of the most difficult commanders to play, with his effectiveness being heavily reliant on the player's skill. Raynor's army forces are fairly strong, but brutal, difficult enemies can easily destroy an unwary Raynor's entire army. In order to survive on brutal and not be reliant on getting carried, Raynor must take advantage of all of Raynor's skills. Generally requires macro, and use of hotkeys and control groups, otherwise the Raynor player will be left frantically scrambling to keep up with their ally. It should be noted that Raynor should always have several orbitals. Alright. Yes. Except for Backwater Marshal. Yes. Something else to keep in mind is that in addition to knowledge of how to use Raynor's forces, Raynor players should have a working knowledge of what forces his army can use to effectively fight enemy compositions, especially what counters Raynor's own forces. Raynor's reliance on callouts is greatly aided by an awareness of the timing of enemy waves. Yes. Yeah, I agree with that. I would add that you also want to be acutely aware of where the splash damage is on the map. You want to know where the siege tanks are. You want to know where the High Templar are, where the Infestors are, where the Lurkers are, where the Vipers are, where the Disruptors are, where the Reavers are. Anything to add, Lila?
Yeah, I think that's a good assessment. And especially the timing of the enemy waves on the maps, you really don't want to have to run your bio force all the way across to meet an attack wave.
Definitely.
Because importantly, your medics will not be able to keep up, especially if you stimmed your bio army to intercept.
That's
then
definitely
you're
happened
fighting
to me.
without healing or damage reduction.
That's definitely happened to me recently. Let's move on. Okay, so we are now moving on to Synergies. So, talking about Synergies, Artanis is an excellent teammate of Raynor. Garden Shell and Shield Overcharge greatly extends the lifespan of Raynor's fragile units. Artanis Immortals can deal great with heavy hybrid behemoths, thus compensate for Raynor's lack of durable units. Raynor's Marines provide superior anti-air. Medics can extend the lifespan of Zealots. Bring units that have triggered their Garden Shells back to full health. Can reinforce the front lines quickly after taking up losses. I think, yes, this is generally true, but if you have an Artanis that's on the 3rd prestige, the Archer Commandant, you will need to stick close to Artanis' army if you want some of that shield overcharge action. Otherwise, Artanis will not go out of his way to shield overcharge you in most cases. Do you agree?
Yeah, and I think on mutations, Artanis' anti-air actually covers Raynor's weaker anti-air.
Wait, you mean Dragoons?
Yeah, I actually think Dragoons make better anti-air, at least against Avenger.
Ah, right. Against Avenger specifically. That's true. That's definitely true.
Or maybe even if you go Tempest as well.
I think Tempest also a good option. I think my only issue with Artanis and Raynor combining is when they both go for ground forces, they'll kind of compete for space on the ground, especially on tight ramps and choke points, such as what we see at Cradle of Death. That's the only issue I see for Artanis and Raynor.
Yeah, so Tempest Artanis with Bio Raynor, they might have the best synergy.
I agree. Carax is a useful teammate for Raynor. With the exception of powerful battlecruisers, Raynor's rapid recruitment creates redundancy with Chrono Field. I don't know. I think it helps it. Makes it even faster. With Chrono Field, if combined Chrono Wave, Raynor can replenish full armies almost instantly. Unity Barrier can make Raynor's infantry slightly more durable. Yes, definitely. I think the Unity Bear is really big. Since it's like Garden Shell, except it happens at the start of the fight rather than the end. But it is a one-time thing, so your Marines will not keep shooting with 1 health. So that's probably why it's not quite as effective as Garden Shell. Carax's superior automated defenses allows Raynor to forego bunkers. Reconstruction beam may not affect Raynor's infantry, but can keep his mech units and bunkers alive. Carax's defenses can be redundant with his spider mines. I think it's fine. Since Raynor once has its developed economy, can arm a great army and defend itself with spider mines, can offer reducing the amount of defenses. Vikings and Marines compensate for Carax's weak anti-air. Carax's weak anti-air? I take issue with that. Do you think Carax is weak anti-air?
No, I think he's really good, especially if the air is stacked up for his orbital strikes.
Right? Carax is amazing anti-air. I don't know about this
I think
last paragraph.
even some of his speedruns are done against air.
Right? Carax is... My goodness. Even cannons are really good against anti-air since they stop the enemies and put them in a position to be orbital struck. Yeah, I don't know about this last paragraph. Everything else, I don't think... Do you think the rapid recruitment talent is redundant with Chrono? I think it actually buffs it even more, right? It's a synergy.
Well, from a strict macro point of view, it might save you 1 barracks,
Oh, all
maybe.
right. But when you're trying to
So
remax, yeah,
yeah, I guess if you're trying to remax, it'll save you a little bit of time. But if you really aren't remaxing on your own between big losses, then you're taking too many losses in general.
that's true. I think
So I don't find Chronofield to be that impactful. What I do like is if you can coordinate Chrono Wave with his upgrades, because Raynor is slower on uh, his eBay upgrade just because of all the setup that he has to do at the start.
yeah, I also think that the passive chrono at the start really helps Raynor produce SCVs faster. I find that Raynor doesn't really have anything that makes his workers produce faster. I guess he can get extra orbitals, extra command centers, but in the beginning, I think the faster SCVs can make a difference a little bit to Raynor's economy. Maybe that's just me. Defenses. Speaking of defense, I think if I have a Carax, if I play as Raynor and I have a Carax ally, I would just not think about spider mines entirely unless I'm spawn camping. I would just go full offense since I know I have a Carax on my back. Except if that Carax is Templar Apparent. If the Carax ally is Templar Apparent, then I will still need to think about defense because they literally don't have static defense then, right?
Yeah, but Carrick still has a delete enemy button, so
Yeah, that's true. That's absolutely true.
Raynor generally likes partners that have delete enemy buttons because you don't have to worry too much about attack waves.
Yeah. Plus, another synergy that wasn't mentioned here is that before you push into an enemy base, you can scan that base and then ping stuff like siege tanks, lurkers for your Carax ally to take out, make it much easier for your bio to push in without any actual threats.
Yeah, Carrick's being able to snipe key units is really useful. I mean, that's what
Yeah.
I use the Hyperion for during
Yeah.
pushes.
Your Harpoon will usually do that, but for the ones you missed, or if your Harpoon took too much damage, you can have Carax ally for that, which I think is very, very good.
Yeah, and Carrick's is around permanently.
Yes. Vorazun, questionable teammate for Raynor. Vorazun is fully capable of annihilating even the toughest enemy force on their own, overlapping with Raynor's high damage bio balls. Corsairs can be very useful. Yes, I definitely agree with the Corsair part. I'm not sure about the questionable teammate part. Vorazun has melee units and spellcasters, both of which don't occupy the same space as Raynor. They're either in front or behind, which I think does synergize, right? Plus, stuff like Black Hole, Time Stop, very useful for Raynor to help defend or push into enemy bases. Raynor scans...
Yeah, crowd control is good for Raynor because he doesn't want enemies that are actively fighting back.
Yes. Plus, the Duskwings, they have Death Recall. What's not to like, right? Raynor's scanner sweeps are invaluable toward her detection issues. Who do you think has better detection, Raynor or Vorazun? Raynor does have scan, but that conflicts with his income. But Vorazun's oracles, they're permanent, but they really suck. They fly into enemy forces and stuff.
I mean, I guess they're still pretty similar to observers. If you're not actively controlling them, you're probably just gonna A move them into the base,
Yes.
into enemy bases.
Yeah. Raynor's Marines are generally better at anti-air than Vorazun's Stalkers. I think Corsairs are better anti-air, especially if you can mass enough of them. What I do is whenever I know I'm against an air comp as Vorazun, I get 3 Stargates, so I can have enough Corsairs to actually fight the air, and the ground is still sufficient for my Dark Templar. I'm not sure. Do you think Raynor's Marines are better than Vorazun's Corsairs for anti-air?
Corsairs are base 5 damage, right?
Uh, they just have a lot of shots. The Corsairs shoot really fast, and they have splash.
Yeah, they have splash, but it's really weak uh, base attack. So
Yeah, I
in
guess it's
that
true.
sense, they have the same weakness that Raynor's Marines will, which is armor.
Yeah, I guess that's true. But black hole baby, black hole baby.
Yeah, so I think for a general anti-air case, Corsairs will slightly win out, but once you get to like heavy air, especially with Avenger involved,
Right, right, right.
they're probably gonna suffer just the same.
Well, when there's heavy air and Avenger involved, you would think that a Vorazun should have a couple of Dark Templar to just mind control the battle cruisers and carriers and stuff.
Yeah, probably.
Probably. Alright, let's move on. We already did this. Alarak is an excellent teammate for Raynor. Oh, this one doesn't need. Yeah, this one's only 5 lines long, so I don't need to split this off. Alarak is an excellent teammate for Raynor. Raynor's large anti-air support infantry increases the effectiveness of Empower Me. I guess. Alarak's Havocs boost the attack range of Marines? This is true. Yeah, Havocs do buff Marines. Coordinating their cooldowns, Raynor to warp Hyperion to any point at which Alarak can send the Death Fleet to support it. I'm actually thinking, can Alarak overcharge Raynor's point defense drones? Or the Hyperion's point defense drones? I think it can, right?
I don't quite recall.
That's what I think this synergy would be. Otherwise, I think Alarak makes a really excellent front line guy. A really excellent front line guy. He wants to absorb all the hits so he can eat more supplicants and use that lightning surge and charge up his ascendants if ever. And just Alarak likes getting in front, and that really benefits Raynor by having his bio be safer. That's what I would think.
Yeah, well, Alaric is very anti-unit, so he can wipe armies very easily with all the stuff that he has.
Yeah.
So if the enemy isn't fighting back, then Raynor likes it.
Raynor very much likes it. Alright. Phoenix is a powerful teammate for Raynor, with Raynor covering for many of Phoenix's weaknesses. Both armies are high damage but low health. This is definitely pre-prestige. The addition of medics means Phoenix's forces normally can't heal, become more hardy. Yeah. In practice, this is true in theory for Phoenix no prestige, but in practice, Phoenix should definitely usually be in the second prestige. You just have Angry Zealot running over and over again into the enemy, and just tanking. It's gonna function similarly to Alarak, just tanking everything for your bio, and still dealing tons and tons of damage. You can also have the Arbiter suit providing both detection and cloaking for your army, which is also really good. I think that's the synergy with Phoenix and Raynor. Anything to add?
So generally, hero commanders have the same type of synergy with Raynor in that the heroes will charge from the front and
Yeah.
shield the bioforce from incoming enemy fire so that the Marines can make use of their huge DPS to
Yes.
clean up.
To clean
This
up.
is the reason why Dahaka had such fast speedrun records, especially for full clears, because Dahaka can protect his damage
His
dealers,
army.
which are like his army, especially Zerglings, because that's
Zerglings,
what
yeah.
you clear with.
Yeah.
And Zerglings, they're super weak. And this is also the case with Kerrigan, where you're clearing buildings with Zerglings. They're normally super weak, but since the hero units are at the front killing everything, the little units can clean up with their superior DPS. That's why they're so fast.
Yeah, I can definitely see that. One thing that isn't mentioned here is conservators. Conservators can massively reduce the damage taken by your bio, which I think is huge for Raynor, right?
Yeah, but done properly, Raynor shouldn't be taking damage. Phoenix's hero should be.
Fair. That's fair. Alright, let's move on. Zeratul and Raynor have some strong synergies together. When Zeratul gains the ability to create phase projections on his cannons, his big limiting factor is vision. Rainor's scans and cooldowns ignore fog of war and allow Zeratul to deploy these projections deep behind enemy lines. Do you want to do this normally? I don't know,
I
but
think the synergy Zeratul provides is that Zeratul is just overpowered, so he can do everything Raynor can't.
the synergy is that Zeratul does everything. And Raynor just cleans up after Zeratul's done, basically doing all the hard work.
Yeah, and
Uh,
Zeratul shouldn't have vision problems with his Watchers, right?
yeah, I was actually thinking that the Watchers are superior in so many ways to scans because they're permanent, they have a huge radius, and they're cloaked, and yeah, you can have more of them. I think when Zeratul and Raynor play together, Zeratul should be the detection, not Raynor. Something else, the Avatar of Essence mentioned here, attack speed bonus from Avatar of Essence. Not just the attack speed bonus, but also the fact that it demotes enemies to make them, just not a threat to Raynor. Really good. Swan, situationally useful teammate to Raynor. Both commanders' armies can function perfectly well without the other. Swan's Vespene gas production bonus is rarely an issue for Raynor's bio army, but is very helpful for Raynor's high-tech units. Swan is much more useful to Raynor's mech and air prestige to help fund his expensive mech units. All Raynor's builds can hold off on getting gas a bit longer and focus on mineral collection, while Swan's gas drones. Oh my goodness, I don't like this. I don't like this piece. I really don't like the second paragraph. It kind of feeds into that stereotype I hate so much about players on Swan. No, Swan is more than just the gas drone guy. Swan, I always recommend getting the laser drill mastery for Swan. Swan, yes, his gas drones do help a little bit of gas, but I don't think it's a huge difference compared to if you get a more powerful laser drill. If you go for a Vespene mastery of Swan, you're kind of relegating yourself to a support role, which is kind of underselling what Swan really has, which is a powerful laser drill and great units that don't cost a lot of gas in the form of wraiths. Uh, Speaking of, the laser drill itself is very useful for Raynor, I think, since it slows down, especially if you're the first prestige on. It slows down the groups of enemies, allowing Raynor to engage more effectively. And if he doesn't have that prestige, he can still use the concentrated beam and pulse cannon to take out big camps. That being said, there might be leftover units, but I think that could be what Raynor does, right? Raynor can be the cleanup party after the pulse cannon and the concentrated beam.
Yeah, I generally prefer uh, deleting enemies
Yeah,
to keep the Marines safe.
yeah. I think this Swan section should be rewritten. I really don't like the gas drone thing for Swan, especially since Raynor. I think even when mech, right, he doesn't really need that much gas because if he goes for mech, his main thing is the vultures with spider mines, and for air, if you're going for rebel raider, it's still heavy on minerals. So I don't think the gas thing is really important for Raynor. Raynor's mech can also benefit from having Swan science vessels? No, here's something. Yes, science vessels could be useful for Raynor. Have Swan's SCVs perform repairs. Yeah, the free repair for Swan also big for Raynor. You don't have to spend money to repair stuff. I think that's a much nicer synergy. Something
Yeah,
on
but
here.
generally in cases where you will be repairing stuff, like that's I'm usually envisioning defensive cases like Dead of Night mutations,
Yeah,
in which case Swan will be the one generally handling defense.
yeah. Swan eye deffing, Raynor eye offensiving. One synergy that I liked not seeing on here was the fact that Swan can build tech labs or tech reactors for Raynor. He can make tech reactors for Raynor, but I generally consider it a waste of Swan's time and resources. What do you think?
Yeah, I think uh, the cost, the resources you save from tech reactors is relatively insignificant,
Yeah,
just
it
throughout the
costs.
course of the game.
It looks fancy, but it's a waste of Swan's attention. He's much better off upgrading his laser drill, getting his units out, getting upgrades, getting stack defense, than making tech reactors. It's cool. It looks cool, but ultimately it's not quite impactful in the grand scheme of things. It's even counterproductive for Swan. Anyway, let's move on. I liked not seeing that on here. Nova Terra can be a powerful teammate. Nova possesses larger force, while Nova's smaller tactical force can clear key targets. Yes, definitely agree. Airstrike entrance positions as Raynor pushes forward. Medics with the ability to heal mechanical units. Raynor going well Vulture Spider-Man can focus efforts on defensive or attack paths. Nah, not attack paths. It should be spawn camping. Nova's forces can take out most attack waves on their own. Yes. Defensive drones can provide excellent sustainability for Raynor's heavy units, but their charges are often wasted in smaller marines. Oh well. Nova herself functions as a detector. Yes, this is the big one. I think Nova being the detector for Raynor. Uh, yeah, I think that's the big one. What do you think?
Yeah, and she's one of the um, heroes that don't tank as well as the others. So she's of limited use in leading the charge and taking fire away from Raynor's forces.
Another thing
So
Nova
in
does.
that
Yeah,
so in that sense, she's not the ideal hero for Raynor. But the
yeah,
fact that she has a delete enemy button is fine with me.
yeah. I wouldn't say powerful teammate, although powerful teammate isn't technically wrong. It just kind of oversells her help uh towards Raynor. She's more like carry. It's more like a carry with Raynor than a synergy, I would think. Hot and Horner work fantastic with Raynor, fitting to Hot and Horner's fitting to Horner and Raynor's friendship. Medics can heal Hot and Horner's units, as well as Raynor's, providing a beefier front line to allow Raynor's longer ranged infantry to push harder. Both have tactical jump. Raynor's scan enables Hot and Horner's callouts to hit anywhere on the map. This is true. Both or for airstrikes to lock onto key enemy targets. This is true. Yeah, you can also destroy the dangerous stuff using the airstrikes. Both have powerful cooldowns. Raynor's slightly more consistent, make up for Hot and Horner's longer but more immediately impactful cooldowns. Raynor benefits in several ways from Hot and Horner's scrap mechanic. Mule drops get extra minerals, making them slightly more effective. Raynor's cooldowns also drop resource when killed. Anything to add?
So something I really liked about Hut and Horner was in the context of polarity,
Alright.
because when there's a huge mismatch between the fighting style of the two commanders' armies, then one army actually suffers. So when I was doing railroad switch on pubs, I was running into a lot of Abathurs and Tychus players for some reason.
Yeah.
And those generally don't have the DPS output of Raynor.
Ah.
But uh, but they're tankier. So what that would cause is the battles would just go out longer. My Marines would have finished killing their half of
The
the
map.
enemy
Yeah.
long before, and they're just waiting for the partner to finish it off. And during that time, I would incur heavy losses,
Heavy
and
losses.
I wouldn't be able to keep up.
Ah, that's true.
So when I was paired with Han and Horner, it was just so easy. Both of us would get through the battle quickly, and then we would be done with it.
Interesting.
And we would both be able to conserve each other's forces just by virtue of having the same style, high DPS glass cannon style.
That's actually very enlightening. I was actually thinking of a different kind of synergy between Han and Horner and Raynor. The death effects of Han and Horner. The Helions in particular slow down the enemy waves, and the Hellbutts set fear to enemy waves. So I think that's a better synergy since it allows your bio to engage more effectively. Also, the Raven provides really good detection while cloaked, and also has the lock-on thing, which helps Raynor deal more damage. That's
Yeah, it enhances their glass cannon style.
yeah. I think that's
And the Hyperion's aura helps both of them too.
yes, definitely. That's a good synergy. I agree. I definitely agree with fantastic with Raynor. Tychus, Raynor work well together just like old times. Tychus is all alone can take on attack waves and a substantial amount of healing with proper planning. Raynor can invalidate Fog of War with scans, allowing Tychus to use medevac pickup to push ahead with enemy positions. Raynor's cooldowns also allow him to push more effectively against enemy waves if Tychus and his crew are focused elsewhere. Mm, I think the real synergy here is detection from Sirius, tanking from Tychus, healing from the revitalizers, scans from Raynor for Tychus to draw the big red button. Anything else I missed?
No, but remember, as I mentioned before, if there's polarity, Raynor will suffer.
Ah, yeah, yeah. All right. So that the stuff I mentioned are the synergies. I think Arcturus and Raynor, in spite of the differences, are a powerful team. One of Arcturus' weaknesses is the lack of healing. Sustainless Trooper, something that medics can help alleviate. Really? Doesn't Arcturus have medevacs?
I
Allow
imagine they
Arcturus.
come out a little bit later because it's starport tech, right?
I guess, but
And more
Arcturus
expensive.
Arcturus generally wants to rush to starports anyway because of the blimps. Both make use of
Okay.
very
But
good.
they are more expensive, right?
I actually don't remember. I don't make a lot of them, and that's the other thing I wanted to mention. Arcturus usually wants to go for Earth Splitters anyway, so I'm not sure how useful this whole section is. I guess the Pride of August grant in the bottom paragraph does affect Raynor, and I think the Thor, the Black Hammer of Arcturus also adds armor. I think to Raynor's forces, but I think practically speaking, most Arcturuses would just go Earth Splitters and just delete the map, with Raynor just playing wave camping with Arcturus clearing. That's I think how it would actually play out between the two of them.
Yeah, so I guess if Mensk happens to go more army focused
Yeah,
instead of doing Earth Splitters, then maybe they might have that synergy.
yeah, that's true. I'm just thinking in practical terms. Whenever I see an Arcturus, they usually go for Earth Splitters, and they're really just clearing the map, or yeah, they're just clearing the map. Well, if I'm Raynor, I would just spawn camp the waves and stuff, specifically on like on minor evac, on malwarfare, Scythe of Amon. Like if you're on Scythe of Amon with Arcturus, just forget it. Just play defense. Arcturus gonna win the whole thing on his own. My goodness. Kerrigan, excellent teammate of Raynor. Again, a tanking teammate. Kerrigan can dominate the early game while Raynor gets his forces constructed. Kerrigan benefits from healing. Zerglings and Ultras can lead the charge while shielding for Raynor's infantry. This is also true. Drop pod creates redundancy with Omega Worms. I don't think it's a redundant thing. The Omega Worms, I
It
think,
really helps with mobility.
yeah, it's really great with mobility. Although it can still allow troopers to travel long distance. Yeah, it was mentioned. Kerrigan's immobilization wave can allow him to attack enemy without fear of reprisal. Creep spread allows Marines to heal without need for medics. The tanking, I think, wasn't mentioned. The tanking was mentioned, but for Ultralisks and Zerglings. Kerrigan herself is a pretty effective tank for Raynor, and the detection, I don't think it was mentioned here. The Omegorms were mentioned, but as mobility, I think that the Omegorms are great for detection, so that Raynor doesn't have to scan.
Right.
When Raynor scans, that's into the enemy base, so that Kerrigan can pop an Omega Worm, unload Kerrigan, immobilization wave, then Raynor unloads the rest of his army. I think that's how that synergy would play out. I think. Zagara is a questionable teammate for Raynor. Zagara benefits from Medic's healing, but it's generally redundant as her army tends to be suicidal. That's true. Zagara can destroy entrenched positions easily, allowing her abs and roaches to lead charges while meat shielding for Rainor's infantry. Yes, a little bit. Both units, both use units with high attack speed, so both armies benefit greatly from Hyperion's +2 attack. Yeah, this is true. Zagara's Mass Frenzy can push Rainor's infantry to absurd speeds and attack rates. Yeah, this is true. This is true. Um, Zagara's Banelings are the only unit that I know that can delete waves, that can spawn camp more effectively than Spider Mines. Do you know any other unit that can delete a spawning wave faster than a Baneling or a Spider Mine?
Not units, but
Top
maybe
bar.
Abathur's toxic nests.
Really? I think Spider Mice hit faster than Toxic Nests. Maybe I'm wrong here. I think Spider Mice hit faster than Toxic Nests, but yeah, Banelings are really good for spawn camping. Aside from that,
Toxic nests are supposed to be instant, right? They're instant, while spider mice need to, unburrow and then scurry.
yeah, they are some, but we're talking spawn camping. I think they do detonate instantly, pretty much. But when I see it now, I'll have to check this. But I think in practice, the Spider-Man still hit faster than Toxic Nests, but not as fast as Banelings. Banelings I think are still the fastest in the game. But yes, this is true though. Aside from that, there are not really a lot of synergies between Zagara and Raynor, other than them both being really fast and can co-clear the map.
Yeah, so Zagara is actually another good polarity partner for Raynor, just
Yeah,
because of their style.
polarity,
And
yes.
Raynor does solve one of Zagara's problems, where after you suicide all of your units,
There's nothing
where's the
there.
follow-up? Raynor
Yeah,
Raynor is the follow-up.
Raynor is the follow-up. There we go. Abathur is an excellent teammate for Raynor. Abathur's Mend ability can aid in large fights when used alongside Rainor's medics. True. Rainor's Marines can cover Abathur's lack of early game anti-air. No. Brutalisk, hello? In mid to late game, Abathur's heavy units' high area damage does go well with infantry air support from Raynor, or infantry support from Raynor. Uh, high splash damage. Abathur's I guess the Brutalisks have high splash damage. Devourers have splash damage. Toxic Nests have splash damage. Man can also heal Rainor's bio in huge numbers. Wow, it was used literally twice. The Mend was literally mentioned twice for Abathur. It's only a 4 paragraph sentence. They really didn't have a lot to say, did they? No, the way this works is Abathur has Vipers and Brutalisks, which make the game safer for bio, right?
Yeah, and Abathur does have a similar thing as Zeratul, where Abathur is just so much stronger than Raynor that Abathur covers everything.
Yeah, kind of. Uh, when they're pushing together, Brutalisks tank, Vipers disable enemy from attacking, then Rainer's bio is very happy. But yeah, if the Abathur is really good, usually he just cleans the map before Raynor can do anything. Stukov and Raynor have fairly minimal synergy. Both rely on large, more disposable armies, but Stukov can still screen for Raynor's infantry. Medics will often waste their energy on disposable infested, putting their further ahead, putting them further ahead, and risk and at risk during attacks. Both have high damage global abilities. Both have high cooldowns. What do you think about this?
Oh, I always get annoyed, but whenever I have to swim my bioforce through the waves of infested, they just get in each other's way.
Yeah.
And I also get into real estate war
Yes.
with
With Stukov.
bunkers.
Yeah. All right. This
So
is
they
fair.
actually have anti-synergy.
Anti-synergy. There we go. All right. Dahaka and Raynor are a strong combination. Dahaka, specifically Dahaka, is really strong, and Rainer's just there to clean up. Dahaka's units and Dahaka himself gain extreme benefits from having medics around. I don't ever remember. I think no. I think I have once or twice have had a medic healing my Dahaka, especially in the early game where Dahaka is lower leveled. Both have powerful defensive global abilities at relatively the same cooldown. Really? Scans can give vision. True. Scans can give vision for Dahaka to use the top bars and just deep tunnel. Dahaka uses call down abilities in deep tunnel to any part of the map. True. Dahaka's primary skill functions as prompt detectors. Yes. Dahaka himself later removes need for frontline detection. Yes, saving Raynor scans. In the late game, Dahaka becomes a strong tank for Raynor's army. Yes, very true. Also Dakrun, also Mervar. Powerful alongside Bio, allowing Raynor to deal that. Tyrannosaur is also really good. Yeah. Uh, and Creeper hosts can eliminate dangerous units for Raynor to clean up, allowing Raynor to do the damage while Dahaka has his higher health units like Tyrannosaurus and Prime Igniter Assault Enemy. Yeah. Anything else to add here?
No, he's just similar to any other hero commander. The same sort of synergies.
Yeah, I would add the passive heal for Dahaka and the yelly thing for Dahaka to make enemies slower and disable stuff like the cloaked units. Uh, is there something else? Oh yeah, something else to mention. Dahaka is very weak against missile command, so Raynor can very much cover for that. There we go. Something Raynor can do.
Yeah.
Finally, we have this is the last one. Stetman and Raynor have some powerful economic synergy together. Mules will mine for mineral patches, even if there's another worker. So Blue Zone does provide an economic boon for Raynor at any point, especially with how deeply he relies on mules. No, I disagree with this. I've actually done the math on this. It doesn't actually benefit much from the Blue Zone. I've tested this. It's not true. However, it is wise not to purely remain on this field the entire game, as green and purple fields are still key to offensive pushing abilities. I actually would advise against just blindly stat zone. I got a comment on this on last week, asking me why I didn't blue zone my ally in the early game. The map was Temple of the Past. It takes 6 stat lights to reach the other player's base, and by that time, it's either A, they're already fully saturated, making your blue zone useless, or B, if they're not yet fully saturated at that point, they're just a bad player and they can't really make use of it. Rant over. Overcharge as it impacts select units does not work particularly well with Rainer's Marines, but does so if going for other high-tech users. Yes, true. Raynor also compensates for the cooldowns Stetboy lacks. Yes. Stetman can also help Raynor redeploy his core army more quickly. In reality, what really happens is that Gary clears everything and Raynor is cleanup and spawn camping.
Yep, another overpowered commander.
Yeah, another overpowered commander. That's I guess if they're at the if they're at a similar skill level, Stetboy cleans up, and Raynor just or Stetboy bulldozes the enemy. Raynor cleans up. If Raynor is much better than the Stetboy, then it's gonna be equal pushing. That's what I think. Anything else to add?
Maybe Raynor can help Stepman a little bit against Void Rifts, but that's about it.
Yeah, Void Rifts. Void Rifts is true. All right, so that's it for Raynor's wiki article. It's there's a lot of good here. There's a lot of accurate stuff. There's a lot of stuff that I would change, but I think the biggest thing I would change here is just these huge paragraphs. I would just split them off so that they're easier to read. I think if they're split off into more paragraphs, that would really help this wiki be more helpful. And just have now they do have a section. Yeah, they do have a section guide here, so you can just jump to wherever you need to go. But yeah, I think this stuff the units I didn't bother going through them since I just assumed they were correct. So if you wanted to learn about units, this is probably a very useful guide. Talent progression, I don't see anything here that needs changing. Yeah, just I just went through the practical stuff, the strategies and the synergies. Anything else to add, Lala?
No, I mean, I think this wiki was written very casually, so
All right, guys. Hope you enjoyed that. Thank you for watching. If you have an idea for what else you do, please leave that in the comment. I'll see you guys next time.